In this video, I'm going to show you how to get everything in focus in a product photo, especially when you have more than one thing in the photo that you want in focus. So the first thing that I recommend making sure you have before taking the photo is good lighting. So good lighting actually plays a huge role in whether or not your photo turns out sharp. So whether that is one light or two lights, or perhaps shooting outdoors, you don't need super expensive or multiple lights to achieve a sharp product photo. I started off with the SL60W, which is a continuous light, which I do recommend for beginners. It's easier to use and learn, and it's bright enough to help you achieve those bright, crisp product photos. The second thing that is going to play a role in how sharp your photo turns out is also your focal length. So if you're trying to shoot a product photo of multiple products, or perhaps there are multiple props and you want everything in focus, like a flat lay. If you're shooting with a focal length of about 85 millimeter, for example, this is gonna be really hard for you to capture everything in focus. And it's also gonna be challenging for you to capture the entire scene. So I do recommend a focal length of anywhere between 35 to maybe 50 millimeters, whether that is a prime lens that you have or a zoom lens. And the third thing that is going to make a huge difference in your product photo, making sure that everything is sharp and in focus, is your aperture. So as you can see here, I typically leave my shutter speed to around 100 or maybe 160, and my ISO to about 100, maybe 160, no more than that, because the higher the ISO, when you're especially working with still images and continuous lighting, it might create some grain and you don't want that. But what I do play around with when it comes to my settings is my aperture. So the higher the aperture, the more you can get in focus. The lower the aperture, the less you will have in focus. So whenever you're shooting a product photo and you have a higher aperture, you will notice that there's less light that comes in. And bonus tip here, if you are shooting in RAW format, then it's going to be easier for you to adjust the exposure when you're editing. So while less light comes in a product photo, when you have a higher aperture, you'll get more in focus. So it's just about finding that right balance between your lighting and your aperture, as well as your ISO and shutter speed. And it will also depend on the camera that you have. So for example, if I'm shooting with a Canon camera like this one, which is a beginner's camera, it's a Canon Rebel T7, and it's about $499. I'm most likely going to try to adjust my focus manually and making sure that I have the focus locked in. If you have a more expensive camera like a Sony, the one that I have is a 6600. It's an older model, but they are better with focus. But don't be discouraged. If you're shooting with a beginner's camera, you still can achieve sharp photos. I shot this one with this Canon camera as well. You just have to be a little bit more mindful about your focus. If you want to learn more about product photography, I do have a membership where I upload 2 new videos every single week around product photography, stop motion, and video creatives. You can check it out in the description box below.